The Chernobyl exclusion zone. After the 1986 nuclear catastrophe, this area was abandoned, but nature didn't stop, it mutated. What happened to the animals left behind will shock you to your core. In the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, the exclusion zone became a breeding ground for some of the most bizarre and terrifying animal mutations in history. One of the most unsettling discoveries was the birth of a two-headed calf. Farmers near Chernobyl were stunned when they witnessed an animal with not one, but two fully formed heads and underdeveloped limbs, a grotesque reminder of the disaster's enduring legacy. Scientists immediately linked this horrifying mutation to the intense radiation that not only killed life in the area, but also twisted the very DNA of surviving species. As the impact of radiation altered the fetal development of these animals, this calf's survival became a tragic symbol of how nature was forced to adapt in the face of devastation. Over time, chilling photos of the two-headed calf circulated, serving as a haunting visual of the unseen toll the disaster took on the natural world, forever etching this mutation into Chernobyl's dark and twisted history. The disturbing sight of this calf is just one of the many strange and horrifying mutations found in the zone, proof that Chernobyl's legacy is still alive in the most startling and unnerving ways. Next, we are talking about the glowing spiders. Deep in the eerie forests of Chernobyl, something straight out of a horror movie is happening. Spiders, those creepy creatures we're already wary of, started crafting glowing webs in the radioactive wastelands. But this isn't just some freakish mutation, it's an odd twist of nature's ability to adapt. The radioactive particles creeping through the area have infiltrated these arachnids, altering the very makeup of their silk and causing it to glow under UV light like a neon sign of doom. It's both chilling and amazing at the same time, a very bizarre, fluorescent testament to how radiation doesn't just destroy, it rewires every part of the environment. Despite the terrifying look of these glowing webs, the spiders seem to be thriving, proving once again that life in Chernobyl might be twisted beyond recognition, but it's certainly not backing down. Next, we are talking about the gigantic catfish of the Pripyat River. No one cruising along the Pripyat River expects to come face to face with freshwater behemoths that could dwarf a grown adult, but that's exactly what lurks beneath these murky waters. Catfish measuring a jaw-dropping 9 feet or more have become a bizarre local legend, their enormous shadows drifting beneath the submerged ruins of old docks and tangled reeds. The strange truth is that these giants aren't sporting visible mutations like extra fins or gnarled faces. What's unsettling is the sheer scale of their growth. Without normal predators around, and with radioactive contaminants subtly affecting their environment, these fish have been free to balloon to unbelievable proportions. They've essentially taken full advantage of their strange new world, transforming from ordinary river dwellers into something that feels more at home in a monster movie. Such extremes of size raise uneasy questions about what the radiation may be doing to the entire food chain and how nature warps when left to wander uncharted territory. Next, we are talking about the albino moose. Nothing quite rattles the senses like catching a glimpse of a massive snow-white moose quietly stepping through the abandoned woodlands around Chernobyl. With their unusual earthy browns seemingly washed out, these pale giants cut ghostly silhouettes against broken fences and crumbling buildings. Scientists believe this unnatural albinism is directly tied to radiation tinkering with the genes that produce skin and fur pigment. What makes these eerie creatures so unsettling is how easily they blend into the Fallout's strange new normal. Towering figures that have adapted to become haunting, colorless symbols of the region's invisible scars. Each measured step through the underbrush feels like a chilling reminder that even the toughest inhabitants of this land have been reshaped in ways that defy both logic and expectation. Next, we are talking about the birds with deformed beaks. There is something deeply unsettling about watching a tiny swallow struggle to pick up the simplest seed because its beak curves at an impossible angle. In Chernobyl's exclusion zone, researchers have reported sparrows and swallows sporting twisted, elongated beaks that look more like poorly bent wire than a sleek feeding tool. These deformities aren't just cosmetic, They can make it nearly impossible for birds to gather enough food, threatening their chances of survival. Scientists link these bizarre changes to genetic damages from lingering radiation, the same invisible force that's quietly reshaping the area's entire ecosystem. These deformed beaks aren't just a tragedy for the birds themselves, but a glaring symbol of how nature, when exposed to something as catastrophic as nuclear fallout, veers down a path it's not supposed to follow. Next, we are talking about the black frogs. Out of all the strange and eerie changes in Chernobyl's exclusion zone, the sighting of pitch black frogs might be one of the most unsettling. Eastern tree frogs, once a vibrant green, now sport deep inky black skin, blending into the desolate landscape like shadows. This isn't just a freak accident, instead it's an eerie form of adaptation. Scientists believe that these frogs' dark skin acts as a natural shield, protecting them from the radiation still lingering in the soil and the air. By absorbing less harmful energy, their blackened color may give them a surprising survival edge in this nuclear-scarred environment. But while this adaptation could be seen as a victory for biology, it's also a reminder of just how deeply the forces of nature can alter life when pushed to the brink, forcing creatures to evolve in ways we can barely comprehend. In our number 4 spot today, we have the wolves with strange fur patterns. There's something jarring about locking eyes with a wolf whose coat looks as if it's been crudely repainted by nature's own shaky hand. Within Chernobyl's silent forests, some wolves now sport baffling fur patterns, patches that never grew back, odd stripes where there should be solid gray, and splotches of color that defy any recognizable pattern. Scientists suspect that these peculiar coats hint at deeper, invisible changes within their DNA, possibly caused by the relentless radiation that seeped into every inch of their environment. What's truly surprising, though, is that the wolves aren't just surviving. They're actually thriving. In a world abandoned by humans, they've staked their claim as top predators, hunting in small packs and darting through ruined buildings like ghosts. Next, we are talking about the mutated wild boars. It's one thing to stumble across a wild boar in the forest, but discovering one with bizarrely shortened legs, an overgrown head, and tusks twisting at unnatural angles is another level entirely. In Chernobyl's exclusion zone, these heavy-set animals have soaked up a cocktail of radioactive isotopes, contaminating their bodies and warping their development in startling ways. Some boars appear top-heavy and clumsy, as if their own skeletons are struggling to keep pace with the genetic mischief unleashed by the fallout. While not every individual shows such blatant distortions, enough of them do to leave an unsettling impression. These creatures are shaped by an environment that continues to bend the rules. Each gnarled tusk and awkward limb stands as a living reminder that radiation does not fade quietly. It leaves its fingerprint on every generation that must somehow learn to survive in its shadow. Next, we are talking about the insects without wings. It's hard to wrap your head around a butterfly that can't take flight, yet that's exactly what researchers are finding in Chernobyl's exclusion zone. Delicate creatures like butterflies and moths, once symbols of gentle transformation, now struggle with stunted wings that look half-grown or never form at all. Instead of fluttering gracefully over the tangled fields, some are left crawling on the ground, vulnerable and off balance. Scientists believe the radiation's relentless tinkering with genetic material disrupts critical stages of growth, leaving wings twisted or completely absent. It's an unsettling sight that strips these insects of their most defining feature. And finally, ending off this list today, we are talking about Przewalski's horse. These horses first originated in Mongolia and were wild horses that became endangered. They first became endangered due to hunters who would often kill the stallion, which of course would provide many difficulties in terms of reproduction. These horses also weren't doing very well in captivity, which made things even more difficult. This, combined with the harsh winters which would often claim their lives, left things looking quite grim for the species. In the late 1990s, however, in an effort to help repopulate these animals, 30 of them were released into the Ukrainian side of the exclusion zone, and it is believed that some of these original horses are actually still alive today, which is amazing, but camera trap images have also shown young horses and foals, which means they are repopulating, which is a huge win. They're expanding population in such a harsh environment, which could mean that they might potentially be able to return from the brink and go on to continue as a species, which is something we always want to see. Voles. Those tiny, furry rodents that look like they could be the star in a Disney movie have a dark secret in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. They are the victims of their own diet. These creatures love mushrooms, and unfortunately, some mushroom species in the area are excellent at soaking up radiation like sponges. The result? Voles in radioactive hotspots show alarming trends. They're less fertile, their populations are dwindling, and their tiny eyes are developing cataracts at an unnaturally high rate. These symptoms highlight just how deeply radiation works its way through the food chain, showing no mercy even to the smallest forest residents. Next, we are talking about the mutated wolves. Wolves are not just surviving, they're actually thriving in Chernobyl's ghostly forests. Not only this, but they might actually be holding a secret that could help humanity. Studies by a Princeton University team revealed that these predators possess altered immune systems, potentially making them more resistant to cancer. Blood samples showed that their DNA has adapted in very unique ways, allowing them to tolerate the radiation-filled environment. Researchers believe these wolves could offer clues to combat cancer in humans. It's quite the twist of fate that the very landscape that should have destroyed them might have transformed them into something extraordinary. Next, we are talking about swallows. Barn swallows darting through the Chernobyl exclusion zone are more than just survivors of a nuclear disaster. They're carriers of a microscopic phenomenon that defies all logic. Nestled within their bodies are bacteria that have developed an extraordinary resistance to gamma radiation. These bacterial hitchhikers, exposed to generations of radioactive stress, have adapted in ways that turn one of nature's most destructive forces into a manageable environmental factor. Researchers have observed that these bacteria not only survive in high radiation conditions, but they actually thrive, suggesting that the disaster created an evolutionary pressure cooker that selected these near indestructible microbes. These microorganisms are effectively rewriting the rules of survival at the cellular level, raising questions about the adaptability of life in extreme conditions. Could this be a blueprint for how life might evolve in radioactive environments on other planets, or in the aftermath of nuclear catastrophes elsewhere? Next, we are talking about the lynx. The Eurasian lynx, long thought extinct in Europe, has staged a surprising return in Chernobyl's exclusion zone. With humans gone, these elusive cats have reclaimed their territory, thriving in the irradiated forests. While their radioactive exposure is unknown, scientists believe their radiation levels match other animals inside of the zone. Hundreds now roam the area, a long way from the extinction that people had thought. It is very clear that Chernobyl has shown us the unexpected consequences of a nuclear disaster, and how nature has bounced back in ways that no one even thought was possible. These predators have turned Chernobyl into their sanctuary, a radioactive kingdom where humanity no longer rules. In our number 6 spot today, we have the radioactive boars. The wild boars of Chernobyl are spreading. It sounds like a terrifying zombie movie, and honestly, it kind of is. These radioactive animals roam beyond the exclusion zone, mingling with non-radioactive boars, and then sometimes ending up as food for unsuspecting humans. In 2017, a third of wild boars tested in Germany showed radiation levels too dangerous for consumption thanks to their love of radioactive mushrooms. The boar's mobility ensures that Chernobyl's legacy continues to spread far beyond its borders, turning an ordinary forest hunt into a potential brush with disaster. At our number 5 spot and halfway mark, we have the eagles. The lynx isn't the only one making a huge comeback. The mighty white-tailed eagles, endangered across much of Europe, are making quite the appearance in Chernobyl. These birds, perched atop abandoned watchtowers, add to the ghostly atmosphere of the exclusion zone. While their populations are growing, which is great, they are not not immune to radiation's effects. Researchers have found tumors, beak deformities, and lower fertility rates in some of the zone's 249 bird species. Yet, the eagles still continue to flourish, reclaiming a land stripped of human interference, but still full of invisible dangers. Next, we are talking about mutated spiders. Spiders are bad enough when they're normal. Mutated spiders are the stuff of nightmares. The spiders of Chernobyl's red forest are spinning webs that seem straight out of a horror movie. Their webs are oddly shaped, with chaotic patterns suggesting some very mysterious genetic mutations at play, and even more disturbing, these webs are radioactive themselves, laced with particles that have settled into the environment over decades. The spiders and their prey live and die in these toxic traps, creating a macabre cycle of contamination that illustrates how deeply radiation has seeped into even the tiniest details of life in the zone. In our number 3 spot today, we are talking about bison. The hulking bison of Chernobyl's exclusion zone, weighing up to a staggering 2,200 pounds, are living symbols of nature's resilience, but also its vulnerabilities. These majestic creatures graze on vegetation laced with radioactive particles absorbed from the soil. Every mouthful of grass or bark adds to their radiation load as isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 continue to circulate through the ecosystem decades after the disaster. Their sheer size and strength make them nearly invincible to predators, but radiation exposure has its own invisible consequences. Researchers have raised concerns about the long-term effects on their health and reproduction, including potential mutations, weakened immune systems, and shortened lifespans. Even more unsettling is the role these bison play in spreading the contamination. As they roam through the exclusion zone, their movements redistribute radioactive particles. Despite the risks, like many of the other animals, the bison have found a strange kind of sanctuary in this human-free wilderness. Their numbers are growing, and conservationists cautiously monitor their progress, marveling at how one of Europe's rarest animals has adapted to an environment hostile to most life forms. Next, we are talking about invertebrates. From one of the largest animals to some of the smallest, beneath the soil of Chernobyl's forests, the tiny creatures are waging a quiet battle for survival. Populations of bumblebees, butterflies, and grasshoppers have plummeted in areas with high radiation. The radioactive soil, saturated with cesium-137 and strontium-90, interferes with their ability to lay viable eggs, cutting off future generations. These losses ripple up the food chain, affecting everything from birds to small mammals. Invertebrates' decline is a reminder that radiation's most devastating impacts often begin with the smallest players in an ecosystem. And finally, to end off this list, in our number 1 spot, we are talking about fungi. For this one, we are heading right inside the heart of the reactor itself, the place where this all really started. Deep within the reactor's ruins, black fungi cling to life on the walls of the destroyed core itself. Species like Cryptococcus neoformans and Cladosporium don't just survive radiation, they actually use it as an energy source. Researchers have discovered that these fungi contain melanin, a pigment that absorbs ionizing radiation and turns it into chemical energy, much like plants use sunlight in photosynthesis. This ability, dubbed radiotropism, is as unsettling as it is fascinating, raising questions about what other life forms might adapt to survive in similarly extreme conditions.
Starting off this list, in at number 10, we have LRP5 mutation. Back in 1994, scientists discovered a genetic mutation known as LRP5. This is a gene that regulates the production and release of protein, which means your body could produce more protein into your bones or less protein into your bones. It plays a major role in your bone density. Well, this mutation was discovered when a man was in a serious car crash, but after he got x-rays, there didn't seem to be any fractures or broken bones when there should have been. Because of the LRP5 mutation, this man's bones were actually 8 times more dense than the average person. Also, it has been discovered that this has been genetically found in this guy's family tree. Like, his family members have this condition. This man has family members who was unable to get a hip surgery because doctors were unable to screw anything into the bones.
Coming
into number 9, we have Mermaid syndrome. Mermaid syndrome, as it is colloquially known, is something called anomalies. It's a rare deformity that sees the person's legs fused together like a mermaid tail. The condition is extremely rare and usually goes hand in hand with kidney and bladder issues. Many babies are still born with the syndrome, and the oldest known sufferer, Tiffany Yorks, died aged 27.
Number 8 brings us to a high tolerance for cold temperatures. Would you guys believe me if I told you that there are some populations on Earth that are able to live in sub-zero temperatures without feeling cold? Well, it's true, and I definitely don't have that superpower. Inuits and other populations that have lived in intense cold temperatures have adapted to this harsh way of life. Their bodies are better suited to adjusting to these harsh climates than people who have to live in the milder temperatures, so it's actually pretty impressive. They can maintain body temperatures without shivering, and they have fewer sweat glands on their body. Considering that our bodies are much more suited to adjusting to heat than cold, it's actually quite impressive that these people have actually been able to live and thrive in freezing temperatures. I for sure wouldn't be able to last like a minute in Siberia, let alone live there my entire life. I've gone into some hot tubs that I found too cold. Moving into number 7, we have Proteus syndrome, which is a very rare condition that causes human bones, skin, and other tissues to overgrow. This syndrome is also known as the elephant man syndrome. Yeah, a lot of you guys probably heard of it. There have just been over 200 cases of the syndrome worldwide in history, and saying that right now, it's estimated that just 120 people with that condition are still alive. With almost 8 billion people in the world, that is extremely rare. In 2011, researchers were able to determine the cause of the Proteus syndrome. Patients with this condition have a mutation in there. Well, the mutation is the AKT1 gene. It's pretty much a gene that controls your body's growth factors. The most famous case of this condition is Joseph Merrick. This is the guy right here. He is known as the original Elephant Man. He became famous when he was seen in freak shows. Merrick was able to live with this condition for 27 years.
Coming into number 6, we have elephant syndrome. Most people have heard of the Elephant Man, but what people in the 1800s didn't know about Joseph Merrick was that he was actually suffering from Proteus syndrome. This is a genetic disorder and a gene mutation. The mutant gene causes horrifying disfigurations, leading body parts to grow rapidly and asymmetrically.
The sprinter mutation races in at number 5. So we all have a gene called ACTN3, but there are certain variations of the gene that helps our bodies to make protein that controls, the fast twitch muscle fibers. These cells are actually responsible for causing our muscles to quickly tense and flex up while we're running or, weightlifting. But not everyone is gifted with this supersonic speed. Scientists just recently discovered that elite sprinters and power athletes, well, they actually have 2 mutations of this gene. This is what gives them the ability to run as fast as the Flash or Sonic. Okay, not really that fast, but maybe. Well, the mutation is called the sports gene, and if you have it, you should definitely consider a career in sprinting, or you can just enjoy the fact that you can get to places, a lot faster than most of the population. Next up, number 4, we have another very rare mutation of the hands and feet. Well, this right here is a picture of a 6-year-old boy from China. His name is Li Jinping, and he was born with 15 fingers and 16 toes, and as you can see on his hands, a lot of his fingers are actually fused together. The condition is known as polydactyly, which just means someone who is born with 1 or more extra fingers. Doctors at the Shangjiang Hospital of China Medical University in Shenyang was able to successfully remove all of the additional fingers and toes in a surgical operation that lasted more than 5 hours.
Coming into number 3, we have werewolf syndrome. Officially known as hypertrichosis or Ambras syndrome, this genetic mutation means that sufferers grow abnormal amounts of body hair over their entire body.
Next up, just like that, number 2, we have super strength. Some people already have beast mode muscles due to lack of myostatin. This is a protein that tells muscles, stop growing. This is like having a natural steroid in your body, except it wouldn't show up on blood tests. There are animals who lack this protein, so they grow large, muscular bodies that have little fat on them. But in humans, this mutation allows them to reach a muscle mass that is double that of an average person. And they even stay this way. They don't need to fork out money on gym memberships. I'm pretty jealous of that. This is definitely a mutation that I would want to have. Finally, number 1, we have Polycoria, aka aka double pupils. I don't know why I got freaked out when I was doing the research for this one. I was seeing all of these pictures. It's just not a normal thing. In fact, it's super rare. It's a pathological condition where one of the eyes have multiple pupil openings in the iris. Let me show you guys a few examples of people who have this condition and the way it can appear in someone's eyes. First up, we have this. Here we can see a double pupil, but it's kind of not even there, it's very small, and I'm not sure how much lighter objects that this person's able to see. I think it was taken before dilation, because take a look at this picture right here, this is the same eye, so when dilated, the pupil, it kind of looks normal. Here's another image of a double pupil. This one is more obvious, and here's what it looks like dilated. The pupil is absolutely massive.
Number 10 on this list is human tails. If we take a look at the animal kingdom, tails are a pretty common thing. In fact, most birds, mammals, reptiles, and even fish have tails. Humans, however, for the most part, don't. Well, most of us anyways. There is a rare mutation that humans can be born with an actual tail. It's actually believed that very early on, as a baby is being developed in the womb, there will be a tail attached to this child. It's a very small thing that will go away, but for some humans, it never does. This makes a lot of sense because it's believed that humans evolved from creatures that would have had tails. In fact, pretty much all monkeys have tails, so it makes sense that at one point or another, we also would have had these little things poking out of our backside. Unlike a lot of other entries on this list, this mutation isn't necessarily super dangerous. For most people, they go on to live totally normal lives just with a tiny little tail. Obviously, it's gotta be pretty bloody annoying though, because I feel like your entire life you'd just be perpetually sitting on your own tail, which would kinda suck. But there could also be some cool things with this too. Some people actually have the capability to move their own tail. Like they actually have control over the full thing. I don't think that they can swing off of trees or anything like that, but still, moving a tail around would definitely make for a pretty neat party trick. Number 9 on this list is reptile hearts. Let me paint you the picture here, folks. You're chilling out at your home, everything is good. It's just a typical day in your 59-year-old male life. Boom, your chest starts to feel a bit strange, then it starts to get worse. The pains are significant right now and you think, holy mother of God, am I having a heart attack? You rush to the hospital just praying that you make it there in time and that your heart can hold on until then. You get there, but once you do, you get a very surprising report. The good news is that you aren't suffering from a heart attack and that death isn't totally imminent. The bad news is that you're slowly turning into a snake. Well, at least your heart is doing that. This is literally exactly what happened to a 59-year-old man. How this happened, why this happened, and what we can do to prevent it are all things that doctors truly don't know. In truth, this was only the second time that this has ever reportedly happened. Now, it's very possible that it's happened to other people and just hasn't been reported yet, but either way, it's still super rare. Being a snake would definitely be pretty cool, but I think I'd like to stick with my human heart if that's alright. Number 8 on this list is multiple breasts. Having 2 breasts is honestly a pretty unique human thing. Think about all of the other mammals out there that have way more than that. Back in the day, it's believed that we would have evolved from creatures that had way more than 2 breasts. So why did this go away? Well, there really just wasn't any reason to have more than 2. Cats, for instance, have more than that, but they also give birth to multiple offspring at a time, so there's an actual purpose for having them. Humans typically give birth to 1 other human at a time, and in very rare cases, 2. Therefore, having more than 2 breasts just really doesn't make any evolutionary sense. However, the genes are there, we've done it before, and that's why, in rare cases, sometimes it happens again. What's kind of strange is that this mutation is way more common in men than it is in women. And because it's way more common in men, these additional breasts often go unnoticed. The women that do end up with this mutation typically have these extra breasts removed. They can't really decide where these things pop up, and having a breast growing in your armpit has got to be pretty uncomfortable. Number 7 on this list is ectrodactyly. This is commonly known as a split hand or split foot mutation. Middle fingers or middle toes will usually be affected, and in some individuals, literally all 4 hands and feet can be hit with it. This sucks sucks for everybody who has to deal with it, but especially those who have all their limbs affected. It's gotta be brutal. Think about having to walk around or grab things like this. You can't. You wouldn't be able to. How are you supposed to drive a car or text on a phone or literally walk properly if it's your feet that are affected? This should affect people at birth, so if you don't have it right now, then you should be okay. Number 6 on this list is the Proteus syndrome. Proteus syndrome is a rare condition which will affect your bones, your skin, your muscles, and literally all other tissues in the body. This mutation is really very scary, and I feel for those who it affects. Basically, parts of your body will grow at a proportion to the rest of your body. This mutation is also asymmetric, so you may have your left leg get really big, but your right leg stays at a normal size. This syndrome can also affect literally any part of your body too. Your face, nostrils, legs, arms, ears, you name it, and if you have this mutation, they might just get really big. This mutation obviously makes it very difficult for those individuals to live everyday normal lives and will often be struggling with it forever. It also makes it far more likely to develop tumors and some skin conditions that your everyday individuals usually don't need to worry as much about. If you're watching this video and you don't already have it, then you're probably good unless you're between the ages of 6 months and 18 months. That's when you typically notice the growth, and from there on out, it's just going to continue with age. Number 5 on this list is hypertrichosis. Ever wondered what it's like to be the teen wolf? Well, if you develop this mutation, then this is probably as close as you're going to be able to get. Basically, this mutation is excessive hair growth. We're talking like serious levels of hair here, guys. Not just a scruffy beard, but full-on locks growing out of your cheeks and everything. For a very long time, you'd often see people who had this disease working in the circus. Julia Pastrana is one of the most famous ones. She was born in Mexico in 1834 and made a name for herself in the circus community, becoming a performer and showing off her mutation. And honestly, shout out Julia. I have to imagine that it's very difficult being born with something like that, but Julia went out there, made the best out of a bad situation, so honestly, solid respect. Number 4 on this list is Uner Tan syndrome. So this mutation is super specific, and right now the scientific community is still trying to decide whether it's an actual mutation or if people are just trying to punk us. Let me explain. UTS is a syndrome that was proposed by the Turkish evolutionary biologist Uner Tan after studying 5 members of the Ulus family in rural Turkey. These individuals all walked on all fours, all used primitive speech, and appeared to have congenital brain impairment. It's very strange though, because nobody really knows why this happened. That's why some people in the scientific community have come out and talked about how genetics have absolutely nothing to do with it. But if genetics do have something to do with this, and this is a mutation, then it sounds to me like humans are straight up devolving, losing all connection to our human characteristics and getting closer to dogs or other 4-legged animals. I don't know, guys, this is a weird one. Let me know in the comments what you guys think it could be. Number 3 on this list is fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. Wow, alright, that was a mouthful. Well, for simplicity's sake, and so I don't embarrass myself anymore by mispronouncing this thing, we're gonna call this FOP from here on out. FOP is a very dangerous and rare condition that you do not want to get. This mutation literally causes your muscles and tissues to start to calcify and ultimately turn into bones. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. You literally start to become just a bone. Basically a statue with skin over top of it. As you can imagine, movement can become very limited when you have this mutation, and you'll have some other health issues arise as well. Breathing can be difficult, and it can also become difficult to speak or eat. And that leads to other major problems that I don't even want to get into. This one is scary as all holy hell and really makes me appreciate the ability to move around. Number 2 on this list is trimethylaminuria. Wow, I swear whoever came up with these names is literally just doing it to mess with us, guys. Alright, this mutation is definitely the stinkiest on this list. People who develop this mutation just literally can't break down certain smells. Their body is incapable, and therefore these smells just sort of come off of their bodies at all times. Sadly, it's not rose petals or apple pie either. Of course, it has to be smells like rotten eggs, garbage, urine, Just absolutely gross smells that will be so overtly pungent that everybody in the room is going to be able to smell it. The worst part is, it doesn't matter how much the person showers or douses themselves in deodorant, they're not going to be able to get rid of this smell. And finally, number 1 on this list is alien hand syndrome. I think that this one is by far the scariest thing on this list, guys. Alien hand syndrome is a mutation where you're literally no longer in control of one of your hands. Your brain can no longer control what your hand does, and it just sort of acts as if it's got a mind on its own. I can't even imagine how scary that would be. Like, imagine you're just driving your car and this alien limb just starts punching you in the sack. That's game over, dude. Like, there's no coming back from that. And this can happen at any age, and usually it comes after a stroke or some other deep trauma. So just kind of cross your fingers that your hand doesn't decide to go haywire on you.
Unbreakable Bones climbs up on our list at number 3, and I think I have this ability. I've never broken a bone before. Okay, where's wood? I gotta start knocking on wood. Well, do you think that Wolverine's ability to super heal fast is impressive? Well, it is, but there's actually a superpower in real life that's pretty similar to it, and it's called Unbreakable Bones. The LRP5 gene is responsible for many bone injuries such as osteoporosis, but when this gene is paired with a mutation, it can have the opposite effect. A family in Connecticut have super strong bones that are extremely resistant to breaking. So if you're able to understand what is happening inside of their body, well, maybe one day this mutation could be the cure of osteoporosis and other bone diseases. Alright, number 2, we have alien hand syndrome. That could be due to a mutation or something neurologically. Alien hand syndrome, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this one. Well, it's when your limbs, they just start moving on their own. Like, you would randomly just raise your hands up in the air, or you would pick up something and you didn't even tell your brain to do that. People who have alien hand syndrome, in which I can't believe that this is actually the name for it, like the scientific name for it, well, it mostly affects people's left hand. Well, that kind of sucks for me because I am left-handed. Right now, there is no cure for the alien hand syndrome.
Like fish odor syndrome at number 5, generate unusual smells. Fish odor syndrome is officially known as trimethylaminuria. This is a genetic disorder where the body cannot break down trimethylamine and comes from a mutated FMO3 gene. Unfortunately, this means that the sufferer smells. One sufferer, 36-year-old Kelly Fadoe White from the UK, talked to the Daily Mail about her struggle, saying that her scent is fishy and oniony. She said that she has to work nights because her work colleagues complain of her smell.
And now number 4, crystal clear underwater vision. As far as we know, most animals have eyes that are designed for seeing things underwater or on land. It's usually not both. We also know that humans' eyes are better suited for seeing things, out of the water. Because when we try to look underwater, everything looks pretty blurry, and for me, everything looks black because I swim with my eyes closed. And that's because water has a similar density to the fluid in our eyes. But would it surprise you that a group of people known as the Moken have the ability to see perfectly underwater even at 75 feet deep? I mean, this is absolutely bizarre. It's pretty insane. They spend about 8 months of the year on boats or even stilt houses, and they only return on land to gather essential supplies. So now their eyes are capable of changing shape when they're underwater, which allows them to see a lot easier. Moving into number 3, let's talk about hypertrichiosis, aka the werewolf syndrome. This is real.
Today, Larry Gomez is a minor celebrity. He's made his appearance his trademark, and he's begun to feel comfortable in his skin.
This condition causes the human body to have an abnormal, amount of hair growth all over their body. Hypertrichosis can also be present at birth or even developed later in life. Julia Pastrana was one of the most famous people with this condition. Here she is right here, and she was a part of many freak shows and became famous in the 1800s. Scientists believe this is caused by mutation of the A22 band of chromosome 8, meaning that this may not be inherited through the genes. This could happen to anyone, but it's extremely rare.
Very strange at number 2, we have tail syndrome. Tail syndrome, or a vestigial tail as it is known, is a mutation that means that some humans are born with extra vertebrae in their back, making it look as if they have a tail. One man in India actually had an 18cm tail removed in October 2016. This has been called the longest human tail ever. The 18-year-old Indian guy didn't see medics until he was into his late teens because of the social stigma attached to the mutation. I for one actually think I could get on board with a tail.
Coming into number 1 on this list, we have the people who don't feel pain. These people can literally put their hands right on a burning stove, or they can cut themselves with the knife. For me, I got a little paper cut. I gotta go to the hospital. I'm crying. I can't stop crying. But granted, both of these things will probably leave a scar, but they aren't able to physically feel any pain. So how is this possible? These incredible people have a rare genetic mutation called congenital analgesia, which causes them to produce more endorphins in the brain. But don't be fooled into thinking that this is an amazing superpower to have. In reality, the ability to feel pain is super important because feeling pain is pretty crucial to surviving. Sure, it'd be amazing to never feel pain, but if you don't know about an injury, how are you supposed to fix it? The pharmaceutical industry is trying to capitalize on this mutation, but it can take years for it to become available to the public. Up next at number 9, we have the sleeping mutation. Were you ever forced to pull an all-nighter because you procrastinated until the last minute and then you realize, oh boy, there's a huge exam tomorrow? Well, I bet you all have. I know I have many times, and I'm sure we've all hated our lives for this decision we've made. But imagine if you were blessed with a mutation that caused you to feel totally energized on just 4 hours of sleep. I mean, Elon Musk does it somehow. Well, could you imagine all of the extra hours you could be spending on playing video games, homework each night, or watching YouTube videos? Well, scientists are only recently discovering that some people have the HDEC2 gene, which basically gives them the ability to live on little to no sleep at all. I mean, I wish I had this mutation. I hope one day we're able to take this mutation and put it in a supplement pill, because I would for sure buy those pills to not have to sleep again. I feel tired all the time, and I would just accomplish so much more in my life. Next up, number 8, we have epidermal dysplasia verticornis, which is otherwise known as tree man syndrome. Well, it is a very rare autoimmune recessive hereditary skin disorder that is actually associated with skin cancer.
2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the thumb. It should be the thumb, and some of the tip of the finger on the surface. I can see that.
This is a very debilitating human mutation that is extremely rare, that results in uncontrolled HPV infections that result in the growth of what looks like a very scaly bark, from a tree. There are no treatments for this because it's so rare, and it doesn't affect enough people, to get funding behind it. There's only a handful of people in the world with this very rare condition.
Coming into number 7, we have cyclopia. Cyclopia is the name given to the congenital disorder that creates cyclopses. No, they aren't stuff of Greek legends. Some cyclopses have existed in real life. There haven't been many living cyclopses, as usually cyclopia in babies results in miscarriages or stillbirths. As I said though, most human cyclopses do die within a few days. However, one cyclops goat in India is still living. Studying this goat may help humans with the genetic mutation survive in the future.
An incredible memory mutation brings us to number 6. There are actual people in real life that have the ability to remember every single detail of every day that they've ever lived. For me, I don't remember what I did just before I pressed record on this video. But I don't know if I would want to remember every painful detail of my life, but still, this is pretty incredible. They're able to recall what they ate for dinner on, a certain day 10 years ago. People with hyperthymesia basically have a super memory. I think for me, I'm super forgetful. I don't know what that's called. So far, there are 25 confirmed cases in the world, and these people have a larger part of the brain that is responsible for processing and storing memories. I'm actually pretty jealous of them. Think about all the knowledge and facts that they will be able to store in their brain. I would get my on Jeopardy. You would never need to use a dictionary ever again, and you would never forget someone's birthday. I've been pretty bad with that. When's my birthday? Is it coming up? Resistance to HIV breaks onto our list at number 10. People can be infected with many different bacteria and viruses on a daily basis. One of the most devastating viruses known to man is HIV. Since the 1980s, many people have been directly affected by this disease, but not everyone was exposed to it got sick. How could this be? Scientists are carefully studying these people, and there might be something in their DNA that actually causes them to be resistant to the HIV infection and other illnesses. So hopefully we are able to replicate this resistance, because it would be amazing if humans became immune, from all forms of viruses and bacteria. This could be life-changing, that's for sure. And at number 9, we have the MFS syndrome, which is the Marfan syndrome. It is a genetic disorder that affects the connective tissues in your body. It actually affects people differently. People who have this syndrome typically have very flexible joints, but it also comes with scoliosis, serious complications involving the heart and aorta, and it also can affect the lungs, eyes, bones, and covering of the spinal cord. 25% of this condition is inherited from a parent, while 25% of the time it is a new mutation. Right now there is no known cure for Marfan syndrome, but there are treatments that help prolong life. Before preventative treatments, the average lifespan was between about 30 and 40 years old, and now people with this condition can have a normal life expectancy.
Coming into number 8, we have tree syndrome. Tree syndrome, as it has been called, is a rare genetic condition caused by an inactivating pH mutation in either the EVER1 or EVER2 genes. The condition means that a person grows scaly macules and papules which look like tree roots. The most famous sufferer is Didi Koswara, who died aged 42 in 2016.
Resistance to poison is next up on our list at number 7. Okay, would you believe that there are certain people out there that can literally drink enough poison to kill an ox, but they walk away without any damage, whatsoever? If I had this mutation, I don't think I would even put it to the test. I wouldn't be like, alright, let's take this to the limit. Let's see how far I can get. And when I die, that was my limit. Well, it just seems like a bad idea to drink a bottle of rat poison. I mean, no thanks. I'd rather drink a can of Coke, but that's just me. Well, in a small town in Argentina, there are residents that are literally immune to poison. Every day they drink from a water supply, and it's laced with 80 times the amount of arsenic that is needed to kill a single person. The population has been drinking from this water source for thousands of years, and as a result, they've developed a mutation to the gene AS3MT, which helps them flush away any harmful substances out of their system.